Hello and welcome back to my channel. I am Sam, I'm an artist and illustrator coming to you from Dublin in Ireland. This is a sneak peek into a full class that I have just published on Skillshare. You'll find all the links below in the description. I am teaching you, if you decide so, to paint in watercolor architecture. We will go through, of course, the materials, the rules of perspective that you will need without needing to become an architect, of course. They are everyday perspective rules, as I call them. And then, of course, painting and refining your painting with details. You will be able to see the outline of this class, this painting tutorial here on YouTube. If you are interested in getting all the details, please check out my Skillshare account class link below in the description. But without any blathering, any further ado, let's get into this painting. And once again, if you would like to have a full-on detailed course, check out my Skillshare link below. So as you can see, I have taped my paper on the page. This helps me very much in keeping the page attached to my surface and not bubbling up when it's wet, and as well will keep a little bit of a border around the edges, which is quite nice. So let's start with our pencil here, and the first thing that I want to do is just having an idea of the main shapes. So we do have a tower which is more or less in the center of our painting, right? Halfway through, we have the top of the houses starting, and I'm just marking this very boldly on the page, just for you to get an idea of where we are at. Down towards the bottom, we have a little rock wall coming up all the way through. Now, let's decide that we are focusing on the tower, so the upper part of the painting. And as you can see, the tower is divided in three parts. So we have the top part of the ceiling, a middle part where we have those beautiful windows, and the bottom part with the clock. The tower is as well divided in two parts vertically. So we have 1/4 more or less, or 1/3 of the page is the one that is in the light coming from the left, and then we have the two bottom parts. Now it's time to focus a little bit more on the details. We can start from the top. You see that first of all the ceiling on the top is slanted a bit. It's in perspective, of course. I'm not gonna teach any perspective classes because I absolutely despise perspective. But a good way to give an idea of the perspective is just to follow what you see. So on the left side, I see a line that slopes down, and the same happens on the right side, though the sloping is a bit less pronounced on that side. Now you can see I went out from my main shape. This because we have a bit of a lip on the top of the beautiful covering, which is gonna be outside of our main shape. You can see that the line in the middle that divides the two parts is almost perpendicular to the horizon. So I'm not going to stress it too much, just give it a little bit of an angle. joining in towards the bottom. The same way I'm going to join in the other piece of our top, and same with the right hand side. On the very top we don't really see much, but we do have two lines that more or less follow the same slant of the bottom here. Follow perspective if you wish. Let's go down towards the bottom of the tower bell. We do have another lip here, which always follow the idea of perspective. So the line will be thinner towards the disappearing point and wider towards the center. Now we do have two arches. I'm keeping in mind these points here because I want the arches as well to follow that line, although I really don't need to be precise in this occasion. At the halfway point of the arches we have another little lip that of course follow us into the perspective. And down here we have some sort of a balustrade, and we start our third part. The balustrade goes a little bit out from your main tower, and I want to give it some of this additional, let's say, girth. And now you can just be free from every sort of perspective of and letting your imagination just go free. So let's start inking. For the inking I'm using this fountain pen. This is a Fude nib fountain pen, which allows you to get a lot of line variation. Especially allows me to draw wider lines at the very edge of your painting. I do prefer in my style to have these bold lines embracing the whole perimeter of the figures that I'm painting. So the first step here will be just to go through the perimeter. So now we're done with the outline of our drawing. The next step will be inking the details, and I'm using a fine liner to go in all of these lines that require a little bit of more precision. Here we go with the completed work. It's all inked and it's probably looking a bit different from where we started, but that is exactly where I wanted to go. Now it's time for us to start with the watercolor. I always start with the sky. I load my brush with clear water. There's probably some red in that still left from my previous painting, but that's fine. I'm just popping some water on the sky, what is called the wet on wet technique. Using a fair amount of cerulean blue, I start from the top and very very slowly bring it down to the bottom, adding water as I go. Now, I'm not going to add any paint to my brush. This is just a clear water. And from the top here, I will just drag down my color. Be mindful of not really wetting your inside parts. And I'm just melting the colors together and give it a little bit of a shade effect type of thing. Still just a clear water. Now I'm deciding to put a cloud here in the middle. So I'm gonna leave a little space between the wet area and the underneath. Loading a tiny bit of my color again. I'll start from the underneath of my cloud and dragging the paint all the way up where I want that to be filled in. With the same mop brush, we're gonna start filling in the buildings down here. As you can see, I'm avoiding touching the tower because it's wet all around. So I just want to work my painting, but work it in spots where I can work on. So yellow ochre and some transparent umber. You can definitely use whatever brown color you have, but still give it a bit of yellow ochre to soften up the edges. My brush is very wet and I'm going in only where the roof tiles are. This is just a way to give myself some surface to paint on later and add my color. Now, while this is still a little wet, I'm going to use some neutral tint and just start figuring out where my first shadows are. Now, the lights come from the left side, so all the shadows are projecting on the right side. So I'm just going to figure out where there are possibilities for shadows. Don't need to be super precise here. Just have sort of an idea of where you think your shadows may be going, and that's almost it. Now that my tower is almost dry, I go back with my combination of brown and yellow ochre and start filling in the whole thing. This is of course just a first layer, so it will get better as you go. Here we go. Now let's change color. The tower is wet, everything else is almost dry. So I'm going in with a smaller brush and I'm picking up some quinacridone gold and some orange color. And I'm going to paint very carefully all the tops of my roofs, all of them, just the tiny tops. Don't be afraid if the color spread. That is a plus that I'm actually looking for, like in this case over here. And if the color doesn't spread at all, I'm just cleaning my brush and dragging a bit of water down to touch the orange color and get it to melt away just a little bit. Why am I doing this? This is not in the reference photo, of course. We don't have orange awnings, orange tops. I just feel like it's a way of giving some personal touch to a painting. You can use to avoid it, you can decide to avoid it, or you can decide to, I don't know, paint them another color. Maybe a nice big blue color would be nice. I'm adding some purple here just to bring up some of these tiles, roof tiles. Just a tiny little bit, one here and one there, without being super precise. Back with my orange on the very top part, and then down one tile here, one tile there. Good, we have done our first step. Let's start filling in some of the details, and to do that I'm using my thinner brush. This is the number 2 Raphael brush. I am loading my brush with some burnt umber, which is a very dark brown. You can definitely decide to use another brown color, adding of course some blue. Now I'm going to paint what is in very dark shade and leaving out everything else. I'll be quite precise in this case, just because we want the shade to be quite accurate, and I found that this is what gives the majority of my painting a bit of natural looking. Now let's go on with detailing. The paint is completely dry, or almost, and we are still going to play around with our browns. I got here a darker brown. This is a burnt umber, and once again I'm going in and filling all those areas that I think may be a bit into shadow, and as well splotching some color here and there to bring a little bit of life into my painting. I especially want to bring some depth of tones into these tiles that are absolutely gorgeous in my opinion. Let's focus on the tower. Ultramarine blue. You can use purple as well. I think this time we'll go with an ultramarine blue though. We need to define the shadows. Once again, it's all a matter of defining shadows if you have understood my painting style. And now we just want the deepest of the deep of the shadows. So I'm going to have a look at my reference photo and just follow what are the deepest shadows that I have. Only those and nothing else. So ultramarine blue and my very thin brush, dabbing here and there where the shadows are. Don't be afraid of the blue. I assure you it will look amazing when it's dry. Now let's just leave this to dry and come back for the next step. Here we go with our finish work in terms of watercolor. Now it's all a matter of adding more details, and to do so I'm using 2 pens here. I'm using a fine liner for the little rock details, bricks, and so on and so forth, and then some white gel pen in order to add additional details in terms of lights and reflection of the light itself. So let's start analyzing our drawing and see what we can do in order to add some of these details. Let's focus on this part here, the fireplace. As you can see, while painting, I left some marks in terms of darker paints, for example, or different tone of paints right here. Something that I like to do is add some sort of etching down towards the marks that I have left with my watercolor. And these vertical etching lines will have two functions. One is to add more of that feeling of a shadow, and the other one is to add on the texture of the materials. Now, down here as well, we have this big splotch of color. Something that I like to do is to outline it, more or less, and then back with my etching technique. And when I'm saying etching, I'm just saying nice and squiggly vertical lines. It's just a matter of analyzing your drawing and find the sides in which you want to add this bit of etching. Right here, we do have another puddle of paint that I will outline, and I will add some of my etching as well. And then you can just experiment, analyze your own drawing, and find this type of situations in which you would like to add some etching. Sometimes you don't even need to outline your piece, like here, for example, on this blob here. I'm just going to add some of my vertical lines, following more or less this shadow, not being really accurate and as well not outlining the area. Something else we could do to enhance our details is refining a bit the roof tiles. When they connect, I would just add a tiny bit of ink with my pen. Like for example here they connect, I just add a tiny bit of ink here and there. I don't need to be precise. This is a brilliant technique when it comes to rocks and dry walls. In the middle of your rocks, of your stones rather, just add a little bit of darkness of ink to suggest where the rocks are connecting one with the other. So let's talk a white pen. This is a gel pen. This is meant to add tiny little bit of lights where it's needed. Usually you can see that from the reference photo, but if you cannot, of course you can come up with. And remember that the light comes from this side, from the left side. So everything that is in the light can be accentuated using the white pen. An example could be this statue here. I can just add just a tiny bit of white in order to get the feature of the statue to pop up a little bit more. I like to add some light here on this arch, just to show that this is catching all the light. Of course, it's not there in real life, but I do like to have this as a narrative for my story. On the top of the roof, just a tiny bit of light here where it's catching all the beautiful light, but really not that much, just a touch. And of course you can, if you want, add some touch of light using your etching technique. That really works very well. On my clock, because the light comes from this side, from the left, so we are on the right side where it's showing all the light, and I'm just very gently outlining this clock, not that much, just a touch. And I think that is it. You just now need to let this dry completely, and if you want, go back in with your ink and add more and more details. I think if I keep looking at this painting now, I would keep working and adding details. This is the part that I really enjoy very much. So let me know if you have follow along. Please consider to share your project with me and tag me on Instagram, of course. You can find me following the links below or at Irish Farm Art. I'll see you very soon. Thank you very much and bye bye.